My daughter-in-law's family shoved my grandson onto the frozen lake because he's too slow. He hit his head and was sinking under the ice. I dove into the water and saved him. They just laughed and said it was an accident. When the ambulance arrived, I dialed 911 and then I called my brother. Do what you have to do. It had all started 3 hours earlier when I accepted the invitation from my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, to take Miles to the lake. I should have known something wasn't right when she smiled too sweetly on the phone. That particular smile she reserved for when she wanted something. Grace, darling mother-in-law, what do you say we take Miles to the frozen lake? My brothers want to get to know him better. Get to know him better? How curious, considering they'd been avoiding my grandson for 2 years as if he were contagious. Vanessa had stormed into our lives like a hurricane disguised as spring breeze. My son Dean, a successful 28-year-old engineer, had fallen head over heels for this 26-year-old woman who worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic. At first, she seemed sweet, even shy, but I had raised 2 sons and knew how to spot a performance. The wedding was a grotesque spectacle where Vanessa's family treated me like old furniture. Her mother, Carol, barely spoke a word to me throughout the ceremony. Her brothers, Ethan and Mitch, looked at me with that expression that says, "You don't belong here." But what hurt me most was seeing how Vanessa systematically began to pull Dean away from me. First, it was the Sunday dinners. "Oh, Grace, Dean is so tired on Sundays, we'd better stay home." Then it was the phone calls. "He's showering." Or, "He just ran out to the pharmacy," became her standard replies. When Miles was born 5 years ago, I thought things would change. How could a woman keep a grandmother away from her grandson? Very easily, it turned out. Visits were limited to special occasions, always under her strict supervision. If I brought a gift, it was too expensive or inappropriate for his age. If I cooked his favorite meal, Miles had already eaten or had stomach trouble. Every interaction was a minefield where I always ended up being the intruder. But what truly broke my heart was realizing that my own son had started seeing me through his wife's eyes. Dean, who used to call me 3 times a week, now answered my texts with one-word replies. The man who had been my confidant, my pride, had become a polite stranger who treated me like an uncomfortable obligation. Today, as I drove toward the lake, Miles chatted excitedly in the back seat. "Grandma Grace, do you think the ice is thick enough for skating?" His little eyes sparkled with that innocence only the 5-year-olds possess. My heart tightened, thinking about how little I had seen him lately. "I don't know, my love, but we're going to be very careful, right?" Arriving at the state park lake, Vanessa's family was already there. Carol, in her synthetic fur coat and her dethroned queen attitude. Ethan, 35, with that smile that never quite reached his eyes. Mitch, the youngest at 30, always following his older brother's lead. And of course, Vanessa, supervising everything as if she were the director of a macabre play. "Grace, so good you came," Vanessa said, with that syrupy voice that made my skin crawl. "The boys are eager to play with Miles." The boys, as if they were children instead of 2 grown men who looked at my grandson with an unnerving intensity I didn't like at all. "Miles," Ethan called, "come here, we want to teach you a game." My grandson ran toward them, trusting as only children can be. I followed close behind, every grandmotherly instinct on high alert. The ice crunched under our feet and the biting wind sliced through my coat like paper. "It's very simple," Mitch explained, pointing toward an area where the ice looked thinner. "You walk over there and shout your name as loud as you can. It's a family tradition." Family tradition? How convenient that I had never heard of it in the 7 years I had known these people. "I don't know," I said, approaching. "That area looks dangerous." "Oh, Grace," Carol scoffed. "Always so jumpy. The boy needs adventure. Don't turn him into a coward like—" She stopped before finishing the sentence. But we all knew how she'd planned to end it, like his father, like my son, like our whole family, apparently. Miles looked toward the designated area, then back at me. I saw the doubt in his eyes, the conflict between wanting to impress these adults he barely knew and his natural instinct for caution. "Grandma Grace, is it okay?" Before I could answer, Ethan had already taken Miles's hand. "Of course it's fine. Your grandma worries too much." And then it happened so fast I could barely process it. Ethan and Mitch, one on each side of Miles, guided him toward the thin ice area. But it wasn't a guide. It was a coordinated, deliberate, cruel shove. The ice instantly cracked. Miles vanished beneath the surface with a scream that tore through my soul. His little head had hit the edge of the ice as he fell, and I saw blood mixing with the icy water. Without thinking, without a second's hesitation, I dove into the water. The cold hit me like 1,000 needles, but I had only one thought: save my grandson. I grabbed him just as he was sinking for the second time, his small eyes already losing focus. I pulled him to the surface, fighting the icy water and my own soaked clothes that seemed to weigh tons. "Help me!" I screamed toward the shore. But instead of a panic or concern, what I saw on their faces was surprise. Surprise that I had reacted so fast. Surprise that I had ruined what? Their plan. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably seconds, Ethan approached the edge and helped us out. Miles coughed and trembled uncontrollably, but he was alive. "It was an accident," Vanessa said immediately, as if she had been rehearsing the words. "The boy is clumsy. He's always getting hurt." Clumsy. Miles was one of the most coordinated children I knew, and clumsy didn't explain the shove I had seen with my own eyes. "He needs to go to the hospital," I said, wrapping my grandson in my coat. "It's not necessary," Carol replied. "Kids are resilient. He just needs to dry off." But I was already dialing 911. While we waited for the ambulance, I held Miles close and watched Vanessa's family. There was no real concern on any of their faces, just irritation at the inconvenience. At the hospital, while doctors examined Miles for possible hypothermia and the wound on his head, Vanessa didn't stop repeating her accident story, as if the more she said it, the more real it would become. But I knew what I had seen, and I knew who could help me make them pay for it. My brother Robert had built an empire from nothing. At 58, he owned the region's largest construction company, with connections that reached the highest levels of local government. Some said his methods weren't always completely legal. I never asked. He was my brother. And when family needed protection, Robert showed up. With Miles stabilized and under observation, I stepped into the hallway and dialed his number. "Robert," I said when he answered, "do what you have to do." "What exactly do you want me to do, sis?" Robert's voice sounded dangerously calm. That calmness I had known since we were kids, that meant someone was about to learn what a Morales was made of when you messed with their family. "I want you to investigate Vanessa's family. I want their secrets, their weaknesses, everything you can find. And then I want you to destroy them in the slowest, most painful way possible." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure of what you're asking?" "Robert, they tried to kill my grandson. I saw them shove him into the lake and then laugh. If I hadn't been there..." My voice cracked, remembering those terrible seconds under the icy water. "I'm on my way," he said simply, and hung up. I returned to the room where Miles slept, connected to monitors that measured his vital signs. His small face was pale, with a white bandage covering the wound on his forehead. Dean had finally arrived after Vanessa called him with her edited version of the events. "Mom, Vanessa told me what happened," Dean said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Thanks for pulling him out of the water." "Thanks." As if I had picked up a toy he dropped, not saved his son's life. "Dean, I need to talk to you, alone." Vanessa, who had been feigning maternal concern by the bedside, immediately tensed up. "Anything you have to say, you can say to me too. We're family." "Family." The word sounded dirty in her mouth. "No, this is between my son and me." For the first time in years, Dean seemed to remember he was my son before he was her husband. "Val, can you give us a moment?" Vanessa's face cycled through several emotions before settling into that fake smile I knew so well. "Of course, I'll go get coffee." When she left, I approached Dean. "Your wife and her family tried to kill your son today." "Mom, that's ridiculous. It was an accident." "An accident? Did you see them push him? Did you hear them laugh while he was drowning?" Dean finally looked at me, and for a moment I saw a flash of the boy I had raised. "You saw them push him?" "With my own eyes. Ethan and Mitch, one on each side, shoved him directly onto the thin ice, and when I screamed for help, they just stood there watching like it was a movie." I saw the doubt grow in his eyes. Dean wasn't stupid. He had just been blinded by love, or what he thought was love. But why would they do something like that? That is exactly the question we need to answer. Just then, Robert entered the room. At 58, my older brother was still an imposing presence. Tall, broad shouldered, with that air of authority he had developed building his business empire. His $3,000 suit didn't quite hide the scars on his knuckles, reminders of a harder youth. He greeted my son with a hug. "How's my great nephew?" "Stable, thanks, Uncle Robert. The doctors say he'll make a full recovery." Robert walked to the bedside and studied Miles with a serious expression. Then he looked at me. "Tell me exactly what happened." I repeated the whole story, every detail, every expression I had seen on Vanessa's family's faces. Robert listened without interrupting, but I saw his jaw progressively tighten. "Where are they now?" he asked when I finished. "Vanessa went for coffee. I don't know where the others are." "Let's find out." Robert pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Jacob, I need you to locate some people for me. Carol Vance, Ethan Vance, Mitch Vance. I want to know exactly where they are right now and everything about their lives in the next 24 hours. Dean looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Uncle, I don't know if this is necessary." "Son," Robert said with that voice that brooked no argument, "someone tried to harm your child. In my experience, when people do something like that once, they try again, unless they are given a very good reason not to." Vanessa chose that moment to return with 3 coffees. She stopped dead when she saw Robert, whom she knew only by sight, but whose reputation preceded his presence. "Mr. Morales," she said cautiously, "I didn't know you had arrived." "Vanessa." Her name sounded like a death sentence in my brother's voice. "Grace told me about today's accident." "Yes, it was awful. Thank God Grace reacted so quickly." "Very convenient that you were there," Robert continued, studying her like a hawk studies a mouse. "Tell me, was this the first time you took Miles to that specific lake?" I saw the exact moment Vanessa realized this wasn't casual conversation. Her eyes sharpened and the mask of sweetness began to crack. "Well, yes, we thought it would be fun for him." "And the idea of taking him specifically to that area of thin ice? Whose idea was that?" "It wasn't thin ice," she replied too quickly. "It was just an accident. Kids are unpredictable." Robert smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. "You know, in my years of experience, I've learned that very few things are truly accidents, especially when they involve families." Robert's phone vibrated. He read the message quickly, and his expression hardened even more. "Interesting," he murmured. "It seems your brother Ethan has a considerable gambling debt, and Mitch just lost his job. Financial trouble in the family, right?" Vanessa visibly paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No, because my sources tell me your family has been having very interesting conversations about inheritances and life insurance lately." There it was, the first piece of the puzzle. Dean looked at his wife with new eyes, as if seeing her for the first time. "Val, what is he talking about? What is this about life insurance?" But Vanessa was already backing toward the door. "This is ridiculous. I don't have to listen to these accusations." "No," Robert said, rising slowly from his chair, "but you're going to listen to what comes next." His phone rang again. This time he answered. "What did you find? Seriously? Yes, that changes things." "No, wait for my instructions." He hung up and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since we were kids and someone had hurt one of us on the playground. "Grace, this goes much deeper than we thought." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "Your darling daughter-in-law has a life insurance policy for $500,000 on Dean and another for $250,000 on Miles." The silence in the room was deafening. Dean looked as if he had been hit by a train. Vanessa was now completely white, her back against the door. That's normal," she stammered. "Families have insurance." "Normal?" Robert took one step closer to her. "Is it also normal that you've been researching methods to make accidents look more convincing?" Vanessa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "Oh yes," my brother continued. "My people are very good at finding internet search histories. How to make a drowning look accidental, life insurance and accidental death, hypothermia in children, time of death. Very interesting reading for a concerned mother." Dean staggered up. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me you weren't planning." But Vanessa had already bolted out the door. Robert made no move to follow her. In fact, he smiled. Let her go, he told me. We already know everything we need to know, and now that she knows we know, she's going to make mistakes. His phone vibrated again. He read the message and his smile widened. What? I asked. It seems Vanessa just called her brothers for an emergency meeting. My people are tracking them. Tonight, we're going to hear exactly what their original plan was. Dean collapsed into the chair by Miles's bed, his head in his hands. I can't believe I was married to what? A killer? You're still married to her, I reminded him, and that can be useful. Robert nodded. Your mother is right, but first we need to know exactly how deep this goes. And then, his smile turned predatory, then we're going to teach them a lesson about what happens when someone threatens a Morales. At 10 o'clock that night, I was sitting in my car outside Vanessa's house, headphones connected to the surveillance equipment Robert had installed that afternoon. My brother didn't waste time when it came to protecting family, and apparently he had contacts who could obtain devices I preferred not to question the origin of. Are you sure you want to hear this? Robert had asked me while adjusting the equipment. What you're about to hear will change everything. It already changed everything when I saw those monsters shove my grandson into the water, I replied. I need to know the whole truth. Dean had decided to stay at the hospital with Miles, who remained stable but under observation overnight. It was better that way. What he was about to discover about his wife was something I needed to process first. Vanessa's voice came through clearly on the headphones. She was nervous, speaking fast, like a woman on the verge of panic. No, you don't understand. Robert Morales isn't just that nosy old woman's brother. He's dangerous. He has connections everywhere. Calm down, Vanessa, Ethan's voice replied. He's just a glorified construction guy. What can he do to us? I smiled bitterly. Ah, if only he knew. He's not just a builder, Vanessa insisted. I've heard stories. People who mess with him or his family suddenly have problems with inspectors, with the IRS, with the police. Some just disappear. You're being dramatic, Mitch interjected. Besides, it's too late to back out. We need that insurance money. There it was, the confession I had been waiting for. The plan was perfect until that old witch interfered, Mitch continued. The boy drowns. Dean goes crazy with grief. Maybe he has an accident too in a few months. You inherit everything, and we pay off our debts. My blood ran cold. They had not only planned to kill Miles, they had plans for Dean too. And if Robert already knows the truth? Vanessa asked. Then we have to act faster, the voice of Carol, the mother, replied. The boy survived the lake, but hospitals can be dangerous places. So much bacteria, so many possible infections. Mom, are you suggesting that... I'm suggesting that family has been an obstacle to our well-being for too long. Grace, always sticking her nose where it doesn't belong. Dean with his engineer salary, that could be ours. And that child who will one day inherit everything. I had to bite my lip to keep from screaming. They had been planning the murder of my family as if it were a business transaction. But Robert is involved now, Vanessa insisted. You should have seen how he looked at me in the hospital, as if he already knew everything. He probably does, said a new voice, raspy and masculine, which I didn't recognize. Carl, what are you doing here? Ethan asked. Carl Riley, the loan shark Ethan owed $80,000 to. Robert had told me about him that afternoon. He wasn't exactly legal, but he also wasn't the kind of dangerous criminal my brother could be when he put his mind to it. I came to remind you that you owe me $80,000, Carl growled, and my patience is running out, especially after Robert Morales paid me a very interesting visit this afternoon. There was a tense silence. Then Vanessa spoke, her voice strangled. Robert went to see you? Oh, yes. Very polite, very courteous. He asked me about Ethan's debt, about my collection methods, about my family's health. It was a very educational conversation. I laughed despite the situation. I knew my brother. He had probably been extremely polite while explaining very clearly what would happen if Carl continued to press Ethan over the debt. What does that mean? Mitch asked. It means, Carl said slowly, that maybe you guys have gotten me into bigger trouble than I expected. Robert Morales doesn't pay social visits. And when he asked me if I knew anything about accidents involving children, well, it made me think. We didn't tell you anything about any child, Ethan protested. You didn't have to. But you mentioned you'd have insurance money soon. And today, the whole city finds out that Grace Morales' grandson almost drowned in an accident. Coincidences like that don't exist. Another silence. Then Carol spoke in a cold voice. What do you want, Carl? I want my money. But I also want to make sure you understand that if anything happens to the Moraleses and investigators come asking about motives, I know absolutely nothing. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, Vanessa replied, but her voice sounded defeated. Good. You have 3 days to get my money. After that, I'm going to have to take more direct measures. I heard footsteps, a door closing. Carl was gone. This is getting out of hand, Vanessa murmured. Only if we allow ourselves to be intimidated, Carol replied determinedly. We have to think about this strategically. Robert may be powerful, but he can't guard his family 24 hours a day. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that a house fire can be very convenient, especially if there's an old woman sleeping inside who can't escape. Ice shot through my veins. They were talking about burning my house down with me inside. And if Dean gets hurt trying to save her, well, accidents happen. I had heard enough. I ripped the headphones off with trembling hands and dialed Robert's number. What did you hear? He asked without preamble. Everything. The insurance, the plans for Dean, and now they want to burn down my house with me inside. There was a long pause. When Robert spoke again, his voice sounded like crushed ice. Grace, I want you to go directly to my house. Now, don't stop by yours. Don't pick anything up. Go straight there. Robert, I'm coming right now. It's not a suggestion. It's an order. And sis? Yes? Tomorrow we start returning the favor. As I drove toward Robert's house, my mind raced. In a single day, I had gone from being a worried grandmother to being in the center of a family war I hadn't seen coming. But they had underestimated the wrong family. The Vances wanted to play dangerous games. They had no idea the Moraleses had invented them. Arriving at my brother's residence, an imposing 3-story structure in the city's most exclusive district, I saw the lights were on in his second-floor office. Robert didn't sleep when he was planning strategy. His wife, Patricia, met me at the door. Grace, how terrible about Miles. Robert told me everything. Your room is ready, and there are fresh clothes in the closet. Patricia and I had never been particularly close, but I had always respected her unwavering loyalty to my brother. Tonight, I saw the same fire in her eyes that burned in mine. Thank you, Patricia. Is Robert in his office? Yes, and he's expecting you to come up when you arrive. I climbed the marble stairs to Robert's office. The walls were covered with photographs of construction projects, business awards, and some family photos. But what caught my attention most tonight was the large city map hanging on one wall, with several locations marked with red pins. Each red pin is a property of the Vance family, Robert explained when I entered. Carol's house, Ethan's apartment, Mitch's business. And these blue pins are my properties. As you can see, I have them surrounded. I approached the map. It was impressive. Robert literally owned buildings on every block where Vanessa's family lived. How long have you been investigating them? Since Dean married Vanessa, I had a feeling that family would bring trouble. And you never told me anything. Robert leaned back in his leather chair. Would you have listened then? You were so focused on keeping the peace, on not rocking the boat. I thought Dean would eventually figure it out himself. He was right. I had been so desperate to maintain some kind of relationship with my son and grandson that I had ignored all the red flags. But now that they've shown their true colors, Robert continued, we can act without guilt. He pulled a thick folder from his desk drawer and placed it in front of me. This is just the basic info. But here's the interesting part. Carol Vance is not who she says she is. I opened the folder. The first page was a birth certificate, but there was something strange about it. Her real name is Carmen Herrera. She changed her name 20 years ago after fleeing Dallas. Do you know why? I shook my head. Because she is legally married to a man named Richard Vance, who has been looking for her for 20 years because she ran off with his life savings and the property deeds to their house. The information hit me like lightning. Then her marriage to Vanessa's father is completely invalid, bigamy. And all the documents she signed using the name Carol Vance, including the deeds to her current house, are fraudulent. I smiled for the first time in hours. And where is Richard Vance now? Coincidentally, he just got a job at one of my construction firms. Tomorrow, he's going to receive some very interesting information about his wife's whereabouts. My brother had always been meticulous, but this was art. What about Ethan and Mitch? Ah, they're even more interesting. Ethan doesn't just owe Carl Riley money. He also owes money to 3 other loan sharks who aren't as civilized as Carl. And Mitch didn't lose his job. He was fired for theft. The folder seemed inexhaustible. With every page I turned, Vanessa's family was revealed as a network of petty criminals and liars. And Vanessa? Your darling daughter-in-law has 2 different identities and a history of convenient marriages. Dean is not her first rich husband. I leaned back in the chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I was discovering. Robert, how did you get all this information so fast? I've been compiling it for years, Grace. When someone enters my family, I investigate them. It's basic precaution, but I never thought I'd need to use it like this. His phone rang. He answered, listened briefly, and smiled. Perfect, yes, proceed. He hung up and looked at me. That was my contact at the county clerk's office. First thing tomorrow, Richard Vance is going to file a lawsuit for bigamy and fraud against Carol. At the same time, Ethan's loan sharks are going to receive information about certain hidden assets he might be interested in seizing. And Carl Riley? Carl is going to discover that he suddenly has a very lucrative job offer in another city far from local trouble. Robert stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Grace, I want you to understand something. What happened today with Miles was an act of war. They chose the rules of the game when they decided my family was expendable. He turned back to me, and in his eyes I saw the older brother who had protected his younger siblings against the neighborhood bullies during our childhood. Tomorrow we start phase 2. They are going to learn that when you attack a Morales, you are not just attacking one person. You are attacking a family that has survived decades building power, influence, and connections, and that doesn't forgive. That night, as I lay in Robert's guest room, I thought about Miles sleeping in the hospital, recovering from an attempt on his life orchestrated by people who should have been his family. I thought about Dean, slowly waking up to the reality of who he had been sharing his bed with for 7 years. But above all, I thought about Carol's expression when she had spoken so casually about burning down my house with me inside, as if I were simply an obstacle to remove on the way to their goals. Tomorrow, they were going to discover they had chosen the wrong obstacle. Dean's phone rang at 6 in the morning while he was still in the hospital chair, watching over Miles. He answered in a voice hoarse from lack of sleep. Dean, this is Richard Vance. I know you don't know me, but I need to speak to you urgently about your wife. Excuse me? Who is this? I'm the legal husband of Carol Vance, or rather Carmen Herrera, your mother-in-law. Robert had called me 5 minutes earlier to let me know Richard was making his calls. I was in my car, heading to the hospital to relieve Dean, but now I had a stop to make first. Carol's house was in a middle-class neighborhood. Nothing ostentatious, but comfortably maintained with the money she had been stealing for years. I parked across the street and waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 7 o'clock, a police car pulled up in front of the house. 2 officers got out, followed by an older man with papers in his hand. Richard Vance. Even at a distance, I could see the determination in his posture. They knocked on the door. Carol answered, still in her robe, probably expecting to see the mail carrier or a salesman. The expression on her face when she saw Richard was worthy of a photograph. Shock, terror, and then a cold rage that confirmed everything Robert had discovered about her. Richard spoke to her for several minutes, showing her the papers. The police officer stood by, while Carol apparently read the legal documents she had just been served. Then I saw something beautiful. Carol Vance, Herrera, being arrested for bigamy and fraud, handcuffed in her own driveway, while her neighbors watched from their windows. My phone vibrated with a message from Robert. Phase 1 complete. Ready for phase 2? I replied. More than ready. I drove to the hospital with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. It was as if I had been holding my breath for 7 years and could finally exhale. At the hospital, I found Dean exactly where I had left him the night before, but he looked different. More awake, more alert, as if he had been processing information all night. Mom, he said when I walked in, I need to tell you about the call I got this morning. What call? A man named Richard Vance called me. He says he's married to Carol, legally married, for 25 years. I sat in the chair next to him, feigning surprise. What does that mean? It means Carol's marriage to Vanessa's father was never legal. It means the whole family has been living a lie. Dean ran his hands through his hair. Mom, how deep do you think this goes? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Vanessa. Grace, have you seen the news? They arrested my mom. Her voice sounded hysterical, but there was something else, a note of panic that made me smile. Arrested? Why? They say she's married to another man, that the marriage to my dad was invalid. This has to be a mistake. How awful, Vanessa. Where are you? At the police station. Dean, could you come? I need legal help. Dean looked at me. For the first time in years, I saw my son seeking my advice instead of just informing me of decisions already made. What do you think? He asked me. I think your wife just asked you to help her after her family tried to kill your son yesterday. Dean paled. You really think they planned it? After everything that's happened in the last 24 hours, what do you think? Dean was silent for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. Vanessa, I'm not going to be able to help you. I'm with Miles at the hospital, where his mother should be if she actually cared. But Dean, it's my mom. I need your support. Your family needed to think about that before they shoved my son into the icy water. There was a long pause. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice had completely changed. The faint sweetness was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. I don't know what your mother has been feeding you, but you're making a very big mistake, Dean. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Think carefully before you choose which family you're going to be loyal to. And she hung up. Dean and I looked at each other. Well, he finally said, I guess there's no doubt about who she really is now. Just then, Miles opened his eyes. Grandma Grace, Dad. We rushed to his bedside. His color had improved noticeably overnight, and when he smiled, my heart filled with relief. My love, how do you feel? I'm hungry and my head hurts a little. What happened? Why am I in the hospital? Dean and I exchanged glances. How much to tell a 5-year-old about what had really happened? You had an accident at the lake, sweetheart, I said. You fell in the water and hit your head, but you're better now. And Mom? Where's Mom? Another look between Dean and me. Mom is busy with some family problems, Dean replied carefully. But Grandma Grace and I are here with you. Miles nodded, apparently satisfied with the explanation. Can I have pancakes? I laughed, feeling some of the tension of the last 24 hours finally easing. We'll go ask the doctor if you can eat pancakes yet. While Dean went to find the doctor, my phone vibrated with another message from Robert. Ethan just got a visit from 3 very unhappy loan sharks. His car is no longer in his possession. Mitch got a visit from his former employer. Apparently, the security cameras caught more than he thought, I replied. And Vanessa? Just discovered her joint bank account with Dean has been frozen pending a fraud investigation. Perfect. Robert had been busy overnight. The doctor arrived with Dean, examined Miles, and declared he was well enough to eat solid food. He also said he could probably go home that afternoon if he continued to improve. Home? Dean asked. I don't know if it's safe to take him back to the house where Vanessa lives. He can stay with me, I offered, until things settle down. What things, Grandma? Miles asked. Grown-up stuff, my love. Nothing to worry about. But as I said those words, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Grace Morales? Yes, who is this? Mitch Vance. We need to talk. The audacity of this man was incredible. One of the ones who had shoved my grandson into the water the day before now wanted to talk to me. We have nothing to talk about, Mitch. I think we do, especially about what's going to happen with the false accusations against my family. False accusations? You mean the bigamy charges that turned out to be completely true? I'm talking about the accusations about what happened yesterday with Miles. I have a proposal for you, despite my better judgment. I was curious. What kind of proposal? You withdraw all accusations against my family. You convince Dean that everything was a misunderstanding, and we move far away from here. Everybody wins. And if I say no, then things are going to get very nasty for you. You have to understand, Grace, that we have contacts too, and some of them aren't as civilized as your brother. Was he threatening me? After everything that had happened, did he really think he could intimidate me? Mitch, I said in a very calm voice, I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. I'm listening. Your mother is in jail. Your brother is being hunted by loan sharks. Your sister just discovered her bank account is frozen, and you just threatened Robert Morales' sister. There was a long pause. Do you know what your problem is, Mitch? You don't know when to stop digging. But don't worry, you'll reach the bottom very soon. I hung up and immediately dialed Robert's number. Mitch just threatened me, I told him when he answered. Really? How interesting. You know, I just remembered I have some friends at the prosecutor's office who would be very interested in hearing about a conspiracy to commit insurance fraud and attempted murder. You already have the recordings from last night. I have everything. Sis, video, audio, digital evidence. Enough to send that entire family to jail for a very long time. Then why haven't you done it yet? Robert laughed, and the sound had an edge that reminded me why people feared him. Because where's the fun in that? Besides, I want them to suffer a little first. I want them to feel exactly what it's like to have their world destroyed piece by piece. And then we destroy them completely. 3 days later, Miles was back home with me, recovering quickly from the physical trauma, although we still had nightmares about the icy water. Dean had taken a leave of absence from work to be with his son and to deal with the complete collapse of his marriage. Vanessa had appeared at my door that morning, looking as if she hadn't slept in days. Her perfect makeup had been replaced by deep circles under her eyes and greasy hair. The transformation was remarkable. I need to see my son, she demanded when I opened the door. Your son? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. You mean the child your family tried to drown 3 days ago? That was an accident, and you know it. It was fascinating how she clung to that story, even now that her world was falling apart. Narcissists and sociopaths, I had learned, rarely admit reality when that reality makes them look bad. Vanessa, Miles is sleeping, and Dean doesn't want you to see him until certain legal issues are resolved. Legal issues? You mean the lies your brother has been spreading about my family? Before I could answer, Dean appeared behind me. His transformation had also been remarkable. In 3 days, he had gone from a man dominated by his wife to someone who seemed to have rediscovered his own backbone. They're not lies, Vanessa. And there is no us anymore. I spoke to a lawyer this morning. Vanessa paled. A lawyer? For what? For divorce and for full custody of Miles. You can't do that. I'm his mother. You're a woman who was present when her family attempted to murder her son and did nothing to stop it, Dean replied with a coldness I didn't know he possessed. I think any judge will agree that disqualifies your maternal rights. Vanessa looked at me with pure hatred. This is your fault. Always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Always trying to control Dean. Control? I laughed genuinely. Vanessa, I didn't have to convince Dean of anything. I just had to wait for him to see who you really are. You haven't seen anything yet, she screamed. And my family may be small, but we have friends. We are going to... Going to what? A voice interrupted from the street. Robert had arrived, walking up my driveway with the calm presence that made people automatically make space for him. Mr. Morales, Vanessa said, and I noticed how her voice immediately shifted to something more cautious. Vanessa, what a surprise to see you here, considering you should be looking for a criminal defense attorney. A criminal defense attorney? For what? Robert smiled, but his eyes remained cold. Didn't you hear? The prosecutor's office is going to file formal charges tomorrow. Conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, attempted murder. I think they are also considering some charges related to threats. Vanessa swayed slightly. That's impossible. They don't have evidence. Don't they? Robert took out his phone and tapped the screen. Immediately, Vanessa's voice filled the air. The plan was perfect until that witch interfered. The boy drowns. Dean goes crazy with grief. Maybe he has an accident too in a few months. Vanessa's face turned the color of ash. Dean, who had never heard the full recordings, looked as if he was going to vomit. How? Vanessa mumbled. How do I have recordings of your family meeting? Let's just say I have friends in useful places. Robert put his phone away. I also have video of you deliberately shoving Miles onto the thin ice, evidence of internet searches on murder methods, and complete documentation of the insurance policies you purchased without Dean's knowledge. Vanessa was speechless for the first time since I had known her. But here's the interesting thing, Robert continued. All of that goes to the prosecutor tomorrow unless— Unless what? Vanessa asked desperately. Unless you disappear, tonight, permanently. Dean stepped forward. Robert, can't you just— Of course I can't, my brother interrupted. Look, Dean, this can go two ways. The legal way, where Vanessa spends the next 15 years in prison while you spend a fortune on lawyers, and Miles grows up only knowing his mother through supervised jail visits. Or the practical way, where she vanishes from your lives tonight and never bothers you again. Vanessa looked between Robert and Dean like a trapped animal. And if I choose to vanish, she finally asked, then Dean files for divorce based on abandonment, gets full custody without opposition, and you avoid jail. But if you ever come back, if you ever try to contact Miles or Dean, if you ever set foot in this city again, all that evidence goes straight to the prosecutor. Understood? Vanessa nodded slowly. I want to hear you say it, Robert demanded. I understand. I leave tonight and never come back. Good. You have until dawn tomorrow. Robert turned to leave but stopped. Oh, and Vanessa, one more thing. If anything, and I mean anything, happens to any member of my family in the next, say, 10 years, I'm going to assume it was you, and then you'll discover there are things much worse than jail. After Vanessa left, the three of us stood on the porch for a long moment. Are you really going to let her go? Dean finally asked. For now, Robert replied. It's more important that Miles grows up without this drama. But if she ever changes her mind about staying away— He didn't finish the threat. He didn't need to. And the rest of her family? They don't have the option of running. Carol is going to trial for bigamy and fraud. Ethan is being hunted by loan sharks who discovered some assets he had been hiding. And Mitch? Robert smiled. Mitch made the mistake of threatening my sister. That night, after Miles fell asleep, Dean and I sat in my living room drinking coffee and trying to process everything that had happened. Mom, I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you sooner, Dean said. All these years, trying to keep the peace, thinking you were the problem. It wasn't you, son, it was her. People like Vanessa are experts at manipulation. They make you doubt your own reality. How did I not see the signs? Because you didn't want to see them. You were in love, or you thought you were, and she was very good at her job. Dean was quiet for a moment. Do you think Miles is going to be okay? With all of this, I mean. Kids are tougher than we think. And now he's going to have something he hadn't had in years. A family that protects him instead of using him. My phone vibrated with a message from Robert. Vanessa just bought a bus ticket to Central America. She leaves in 2 hours. I showed the message to Dean. Looks like your marriage is officially over. Thank God, he replied, and for the first time in days, he genuinely smiled. That night, as I prepared for bed, I reflected on what I had learned in the last few days. I had spent years keeping myself small, trying not to rock the boat, accepting crumbs of attention from my own family because I was afraid of losing even that. But when I finally saw my grandson in real danger, I had found a strength I didn't know I possessed, and I remembered that the Moraleses don't give up without a fight. Tomorrow, a new chapter would begin. Dean and Miles would move in with me while they found a new house. We were going to be a real family again. And if anyone else tried to threaten my family, well, now they knew exactly what kind of people they were dealing with. A week after Vanessa's exile, I thought we could finally start to heal. Miles had returned to his cheerful personality. Dean was sleeping better, and I had started to feel something close to peace. I should have known it was too good to last. The trouble started with a phone call at 6 a.m. Robert sounded tense, which immediately put all my nerves on edge. Grace, I need you to come to my office now. What happened? Mitch Vance was found dead last night, an apparent overdose, but there are complications. I arrived at Robert's office in 20 minutes, leaving Dean with Miles, who was still asleep. My brother was at his desk with 3 empty coffee cups in front of him. He had clearly been awake all night. Tell me everything, I said, sitting down. Mitch was found in his apartment last night by one of the loan sharks looking for him. Heroin overdose. But here's the problem. Before he died, he apparently confessed to a neighbor that the Moraleses had threatened him and that he couldn't live with the fear. My blood ran cold. He's blaming us for his death? Worse than that, he also said that we had threatened his entire family, that we had fabricated evidence to incriminate them, and that they would rather die than live as fugitives. But everything you found about them was true. Of course it was true. But now the police are investigating whether we used illegal methods to obtain that information and whether we pressured Mitch to the point of suicide. I got up and started pacing the office. What does this mean for us? It means we're going to be investigated. It means they are going to review every method I used to get information about the Vance family. And it means Vanessa now has a reason to come back. As if I had conjured her, Robert's phone rang right then. "Robert Morales," he answered. I could hear Vanessa's hysterical voice even from across the desk. "They murdered my brother. You people killed him. Vanessa, I regret your loss, but don't come at me with fake condolences. I know you did it. You threatened him until he couldn't take it anymore." Robert put the phone on speaker. "Mitch committed suicide, Vanessa. That was his choice. He committed suicide because you cornered him. You systematically destroyed my family, and now you're going to pay. Is that a threat? It's a promise. I'm coming back, and I'm going to fight for my son, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of monster you people are." The line cut off. Robert and I looked at each other. "Well," I finally said, "I guess things just got complicated. Grace, I need you to understand something. What I did to protect our family was necessary, but not all of it was completely, let's say, by the book." "What exactly does that mean?" "It means that if the police investigate too deeply, they are going to find that some of my sources of information might be problematic. The surveillance devices I used, some of the pressure tactics I applied to the loan sharks. Robert, did you do anything illegal?" My brother was quiet for a very long moment. "I did what was necessary to protect my family. But yes, some of the things I did could be interpreted as ethically gray." I felt a panic growing in my chest. How gray? "The surveillance devices I installed in Carol's house were without a warrant. The pressure I applied to the loan sharks involved sharing personal information that I obtained through not exactly legal means. And I may have influenced Richard Vance's decision to file those charges against Carol by offering him certain incentives. You bribed him? I prefer to think of it as compensation for his time and trouble." I sat down heavily. "Robert, what are we going to do?" "We're going to hire the best lawyers in the country. We're going to present our evidence about what the Vance family did to Miles, and we're going to hope the truth is enough." But even as he said it, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Vanessa now had real ammunition against us, and knowing her manipulative nature, she would use it in the most damaging way possible. That afternoon, Detective Chris Miller arrived at my house. He was a middle-aged man with intelligent eyes and a way of speaking that suggested he had seen all kinds of complicated family situations. "Mrs. Morales, I understand there has been some tension between your family and the Vance family." "Tension," I repeated. "That's an interesting way to describe an attempted murder." "Yes, about that. I understand you have certain recordings that allegedly prove the Vance family conspired to harm your grandson." "Allegedly?" "Well, the legality of those recordings is being questioned. It appears they were obtained without the knowledge or consent of the people being recorded." There it was, the problem Robert had anticipated. "Detective, even if the recordings were problematic, that doesn't change the fact that I saw with my own eyes how they shoved my grandson into the water." "I understand. But I also understand that your brother has been exerting certain pressure on members of the Vance family, pressure that may have contributed to the death of Mitch Vance. Mitch Vance was a criminal with gambling debts and drug problems. He didn't need outside help to self-destruct." Detective Miller took careful notes. "Your brother told me how he obtained the information about the Vance family's financial troubles. Robert is a successful businessman. He has contacts in many industries. Yes, we've been investigating some of those contacts, very interesting, some of them." The way he said it made me understand Robert was right to worry. They had been investigating my brother and apparently had found things they didn't like. "Detective, are you here to arrest someone or to ask questions?" "For now, just questions. But Mrs. Morales, I want you to understand that this is a serious investigation. A man is dead, and there are allegations that your family used illegal methods to harass that man's family. And the allegations that that family tried to kill a 5-year-old boy, they are also being investigated. But I understand that the main witness to those events is you, and you have obvious reasons to be prejudiced against the Vance family. I stood up. Detective, my grandson has scars on his head from where he hit the ice. He has nightmares about drowning. Those are not products of my prejudice. No, they are not. But the methods your brother used to obtain information and exert pressure on the Vance family could be problematic. After the detective left, I immediately called Robert. I know, he said before I could speak, and Miller visited me too. Grace, we need to talk to Dean. We may have to make some tough decisions. That night, after Miles was asleep, Dean, Robert, and I sat in my living room to have the conversation I'd been dreading. The situation is more complicated than we thought, Robert began. There's a real possibility that I could face criminal charges for the methods I used to protect this family. Dean looked devastated. Uncle, you didn't ask to get involved in this. You did it to protect us. And I'd do it again, but now we have to decide how to proceed. We can fight this in court, but it will be costly, public, and there's no guarantee we'll win. What's the alternative? I asked. Negotiate. I may be able to accept certain lesser charges in exchange for them not pursuing more serious charges. But that would mean admitting guilt. Dean stood up. You can't admit guilt for protecting us from those people. Dean, I said gently, that might be the best option. It's not fair, Mom. Uncle Robert saved us. Life isn't fair, son. But sometimes we have to make the best possible decisions with the options we have. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to answer. Grace? It was Vanessa, but her voice sounded different, calmer, more controlled, which knowing Vanessa was more terrifying than when she screamed. What do you want, Vanessa? I want to make a deal. Meet me tomorrow at 2 at the Central Perk coffee shop. Vanessa continued with that dangerously calm voice I didn't recognize. You, Dean, and your brother come. It's time for us to end this. And what exactly? This war your brother started, which has resulted in the death of my brother. I wanted to hang up, but something in her tone made me pause. What kind of deal? We'll discuss that tomorrow, but Grace, if you don't come, I promise you this will get much worse before it gets better. And she hung up. Robert and Dean had heard my side of the conversation. Are we really going to meet her? Dean asked. Yes, Robert replied. And the decision in his voice surprised me. We need to know what she's planning, and we need to assess how dangerous she is now that she's back. The next morning, I hired Mrs. Gable, a neighbor I trusted, to watch Miles. I wasn't taking him anywhere Vanessa might be, no matter how public the place. The Central Perk was in the heart of the business district, always crowded, a smart place for a meeting that could turn hostile. We arrived at 2 o'clock and found her at a corner table, already waiting. Vanessa's transformation in just 1 week was stunning. She had lost weight, her hair was perfectly styled again, and she was wearing a black suit that made her look like she was attending a funeral. Perhaps she was. Sit down, she said without standing up or offering basic pleasantries. We sat down cautiously. Robert immediately took control of the conversation. I regret your brother's death, Vanessa. But I want you to understand that— Shut up, she interrupted him with a coldness that froze my blood. I spoke with you on the phone. Now it's my turn to talk. She placed a folder on the table. Do you know what this is? None of us answered. It's everything I've compiled about your brother and his business methods over the past 7 years. She opened the folder and began pulling out photographs and documents. Bribes to construction inspectors, threats to competitors, illegal workers, tax evasion. My stomach sank. Robert remained impassive, but I saw a line of tension in his jaw. Where did you get all that? Dean asked. My brother Mitch wasn't just a gambling-addicted loser, as you thought. He was also an accountant and very good at finding discrepancies in financial records. Vanessa smiled, and it was a shark's smile. Before he died, he gave all this to me. And Robert finally spoke. And tomorrow, all this goes to the local newspaper, the prosecutor's office, and the IRS. Unless— Here it comes, I murmured. Unless you withdraw all accusations against my family, publicly admit that you fabricated evidence, and return custody of my son to me. The silence at the table was deafening. Finally, Dean spoke. "You're crazy if you think I'm going to hand Miles over to you after what you did." "What I did?" Vanessa laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "All I did was take my son out for a family day at the lake. Everything else is the paranoid fantasies of a jealous, vengeful mother-in-law. We have recordings. You have illegal recordings that no court would accept as evidence. Recordings obtained by a man who, according to this folder, has been violating laws for years." Robert leaned forward. "Vanessa, even if you have information about my businesses, that doesn't change the fact that your family tried to kill Miles. Prove it in court. But in the meantime, this information about me becomes public. Your company collapses. You'll probably go to jail, and Dean will be out of a job because, let's be honest, who's going to hire Robert Morales' nephew once all this comes out?" The strategy was diabolically brilliant. She wasn't trying to prove her innocence. She was creating enough collateral damage that we couldn't afford to fight her. "What guarantee do we have that you won't use this information even if we agree?" Dean asked. "The same guarantee you gave me when you threatened me to leave the city. My word." "Your word is worthless," I retorted. "Maybe, but it's the only option you have." Robert studied the documents in front of him. I could see he was evaluating how much real damage they could do. "How long do you give us to decide?" he finally asked. 24 hours. I want an answer tomorrow at 2. She turned directly to me. "I want you to understand something, Grace. This is no longer about insurance money or inheritances. This is personal. You killed my brother with your obsessive need to control your son's life. Now you're going to pay for it." She stood up to leave, but Dean stopped her. "Vanessa, just one question. Did you really plan to kill Miles?" For a moment, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt? Regret? But it passed quickly. "Dean, your son is my son. I would never hurt him." "That doesn't answer my question." "It's the only answer you're going to get." After she left, the three of us sat in silence for several minutes. "How bad is it?" I finally asked Robert. "Bad." "Not everything, but enough to cause serious problems." "Jail time problems?" "Possibly. Definitely problems that would ruin my company and affect Dean's ability to get a job anywhere in the region." Dean looked miserable. "Uncle, I can't let you pay the price for protecting me. And I can't let that woman come back into Miles's life," I replied. "So what do we do?" Dean asked. Robert was silent for a very long moment. "There's a third option, but you're not going to like it." "What is it?" "We disappear. The three of us. I liquidate my assets. You move far away, very far away, where Vanessa can't find you." "Run away?" Dean sounded horrified. "Abandon our lives?" "Sometimes running away is the smartest option, especially when the enemy has a better position." "No," I said firmly. "I will not run from that woman, and I will not let Miles grow up as a fugitive." "Then we have to find another way to neutralize her," Robert said. "How?" "I don't know yet, but I know someone who might have ideas." That night, after Dean went home, he had decided to move to an apartment near my house to maintain some normalcy for Miles. I stayed up late thinking about our options. They all seemed terrible. Giving in to Vanessa's demands meant handing Miles over to a woman who had been present when her family tried to kill him. Fighting her meant risking Robert's freedom and Dean's future. Running away meant abandoning everything we had built. But there was a fourth option that kept popping into my mind. An option Robert had obliquely mentioned but hadn't fully articulated. If Vanessa permanently disappeared, all our problems would be solved. It was a terrible thought. It was the kind of thought I never believed I would be capable of having. But when I thought about Miles, when I remembered seeing him sinking under the icy water, when I imagined having to hand him over to that woman, my phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Robert. "Can't you sleep either?" he asked. "No." "Did you find the person you were talking about?" "Yes. We're going to meet him tomorrow morning, before our appointment with Vanessa." "Is it legal?" There was a long pause. "Grace, do you really want to know?" I didn't answer, but I didn't hang up either. "I'll see you tomorrow at 9 in my office," he finally said. That night, I dreamed of Miles, but instead of sinking under the water, this time I saw him being carried away by Vanessa, screaming my name as they disappeared into the distance. I woke up with the absolute certainty that I would do anything, absolutely anything, to prevent the dream from becoming reality. At 9 the next morning, I was sitting in Robert's office across from a man who looked like an accountant, thin, middle-aged, with glasses and a brown folder he kept closed on his lap. His name was Arthur Vane, and according to Robert, he was very good at solving complicated problems for people who could afford it. "Mrs. Morales," Arthur said in a soft voice, "your brother has explained the situation to me. I understand you are in a very difficult position." I nodded, unsure exactly what he expected from this meeting. "Before we continue, I need to know exactly what you are willing to do to protect your family." The question caught me off guard. "I don't understand." "There are different levels of solution for problems like yours. Some involve legal, but complicated work. Others involve methods you prefer not to question. I need to know your limits." I looked at Robert, who nodded slightly. "Tell him the truth, Grace." "I don't want anyone to die," I finally said, "but I cannot let that woman take my grandson." Arthur nodded, as if he had heard that answer many times before. "I understand, and I must tell you that there are ways to neutralize Mrs. Vance without resorting to permanent methods." He opened his folder and pulled out several documents. "I've been investigating Vanessa Vance since last night. The information she has on your brother is real, but I've also discovered some interesting things about her." "Like what?" "Like the fact that she was previously married. Twice, in fact. And both former husbands died in convenient circumstances. My blood ran cold." "They died?" "The first died in a car accident 6 months after she significantly increased his life insurance policy. The second died of apparent food poisoning, also after recent changes to his will." Robert leaned forward. "You're suggesting that—" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just presenting facts. Facts that could be very interesting to the appropriate authorities." "Why wasn't she investigated before?" I asked, because until now, no one had connected the dots. The accidents occurred in different cities, under different names. Vanessa is very good at changing identities. Arthur pulled out more papers. "I also discovered that her brother, Mitch, did not commit suicide." "What?" "He was murdered, but made to look like suicide. And I have evidence that points directly to Vanessa." The silence in the office was absolute. "Vanessa killed her own brother?" I murmured. Apparently, Mitch had begun to feel guilty about what they did to your grandson. He had contacted a lawyer about making a full confession. Vanessa couldn't allow that. "How do you know all this?" "I have contacts in many useful places. But the important question is, what do you want to do with this information?" Robert and I looked at each other. "What are our options?" I asked. "Option 1, we take this information to the police. Vanessa is arrested for murder. Her blackmail becomes useless because no one will believe a multiple killer. That sounds like the obvious option, except that the investigation takes time. Months, perhaps years. And in the meantime, she can do a lot of damage with the information she has on your brother. Option 2, we confront Vanessa directly with this information. We offer her an exchange. She permanently disappears and we don't turn over the murder evidence to the police. And if she refuses, then we proceed with option 1. It was brilliant in its simplicity, but something bothered me. "Arthur, how do we know this evidence is real? How do we know you didn't fabricate it?" He smiled for the first time since I met him. "Because Mrs. Vance isn't as smart as she thinks. When she killed Mitch, she used her own car to get to his apartment, a car that has built-in GPS, and insurance companies keep that data for years." He pulled out a final folder. "I also have records of phone calls between Vanessa and Mitch the night he died. Records that show she contacted him 3 times after the estimated time of death." "How did you get those records?" Arthur exchanged a look with Robert. "As I said, I have contacts in useful places." 2 hours later, I was back at the Central Perk, but this time I felt like I held all the power. Vanessa arrived exactly at 2, looking confident and ready for battle. "Have you made a decision?" she asked without preamble. "Yes," I replied. "But first we want to show you something." I placed a folder on the table, the same kind of folder she had used the day before. "What is this?" "Information about your previous marriages, information about the convenient deaths of your former husbands, and information about what really happened to your brother Mitch." I saw the exact moment she realized we had discovered the truth. Her face flashed through shock, fear, and then settled into a mask of defiance. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about GPS that places you at Mitch's apartment the night he died. I'm talking about insurance records that show a very interesting pattern in the deaths of your husbands. And I'm talking about forensic evidence that proves Mitch didn't inject that heroin himself. Vanessa was very still. What do you want? We want the same thing you asked us for yesterday, that you disappear, permanently. And if I refuse, then this information goes to the police in 1 hour, and you face charges for multiple murder instead of simply disappearing and starting a new life somewhere far away. This is blackmail. Yes, I agreed. It is. Exactly like what you were doing yesterday. Vanessa studied me for a long moment. And if I accept, what guarantee do I have that you won't use this information against me later? The same guarantee you gave me yesterday, my word, and Miles. Dean files for abandonment, divorce papers. You never answer. You never come back. Miles grows up without knowing who you truly are. Vanessa closed her eyes. When she opened them, all the fight had gone out of them. How much time do I have? 24 hours. I want to see Miles once to say goodbye. No, Vanessa, no. You have lost that right multiple times. She stood up slowly. For the first time since I had known her, she looked defeated. Is there anything else? She asked. Just one thing, Robert said, speaking for the first time during the entire conversation. If you ever change your mind about staying away, if you ever try to contact this family again, it won't just be murder evidence that goes to the police. Understood? Vanessa nodded silently and walked away. That night, Dean came over for dinner with Miles and me. My grandson was in excellent spirits, completely unaware of the drama that had been unfolding around him. Grandma Grace, is Mom coming home soon? He asked as we ate. Dean and I exchanged glances. We had been preparing for this conversation. Miles, Dean said gently. Mom had to go very far away for work. She's going to be gone for a long time. But she's coming back? We don't know, son, but you and I are going to be okay. And Grandma Grace is going to be here to help us. Miles considered it for a moment. Then he shrugged with the adaptability of children. Can I have more mashed potatoes? The next day, Arthur confirmed that Vanessa had purchased a bus ticket to Mexico City. From there, she had apparently taken a flight to Eastern Europe. Her trail went cold after that. Do you think she'll stay away? I asked Robert. I think she's smart enough to know she has no options. And I think the evidence we have on her is solid enough to keep her honest. And the information she had on you? Arthur took care of that too. It seems Mitch wasn't the only brilliant accountant. Some records have been corrected, and some witnesses have decided that maybe they didn't see what they thought they saw. I didn't ask for more details. There are some things better left unsaid. A week later, Dean filed for divorce. Based on abandonment, there was no response from Vanessa, exactly as we had agreed. 2 months later, a judge granted Dean full custody of Miles. 6 months later, we had settled into a new routine. Dean had moved into a house 3 blocks from mine. Miles spent the afternoons with me after school. We ate dinner together on Sundays. It was the family life I'd been dreaming of for years. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when Miles was sleeping and the house was silent, I found myself thinking about Vanessa, wondering where she was, what she was doing, if she ever regretted the decision she had made, and wondering if she would ever be foolish enough to come back. 18 months later, I thought we could finally breathe easy. Miles had started first grade and was flourishing. He no longer had nightmares about the water, and the scar on his forehead had healed into a faint line that the doctor said would completely disappear over time. Dean had found a new job as chief engineer at a technology company and had started dating a teacher named Sarah, whom Miles adored. For the first time in years, my son seemed genuinely happy. Robert had resolved his legal issues. Apparently, the witnesses against him had decided their memories weren't as reliable as they initially thought. His company was more prosperous than ever. I had started taking dance classes on Tuesday nights and had made new friends with women my age who knew how to enjoy life. Everything was perfect, too perfect. I should have known it couldn't last. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of a worried teacher. Mrs. Morales, Miss Sarah said on the phone, Miles has been acting strangely the last few days. Very quiet, very frightened. Has anything happened at home? Not that I know of. What kind of behavior? He hides during recess. He doesn't want to participate in group activities. And yesterday, when a volunteer mother came to class, he hid under his desk and started crying. My stomach tightened. What did that volunteer mother look like? Hispanic woman, brown hair, very well dressed. She said she was interested in observing classes because she was considering enrolling her son here next year. Did she give you her name? Yes, Marcy Vane. The world stopped around me. Vanessa had returned, using her mother's real maiden name, and she had been at Miles's school. Miss Sarah, I'm picking up Miles right now, and please don't allow any visitors near him without my specific authorization. Is everything all right? Yes, everything is fine. I arrived at the school in 10 minutes, probably violating a dozen traffic laws. I found Miles in the principal's office, sitting in a chair that seemed to swallow him, with dried tears on his cheeks. Grandma Grace! He ran toward me as soon as he saw me. There was a lady who looked like Mom, but wasn't Mom, and I got scared. I hugged him tightly, feeling his small body tremble. Where did you see her, my love? In the classroom. She was talking to Miss Sarah, and when she saw me, she smiled that way that scares me. What way? Like when Mom was angry, but pretending she wasn't. My 6-year-old grandson had instinctively recognized the threat, even when the adults around him hadn't. Adults often miss things. In the car, I dialed Robert's number. Vanessa is back, I said as soon as he answered. Are you sure? She was at Miles's school today, using the name Marcy Vane. Did she talk to Miles? Not directly, but he saw her. He recognized her. He's terrified. There was a long pause. Grace, take him to my house, now, and call Dean. We need to meet tonight. What do you think she's planning? I don't know, but the fact that she's using her mother's maiden name means she's probably been planning this for months. That night, after Miles was asleep in Robert's guest room, the 3 adults gathered in his office to plan our response. First, Robert said, we need to confirm that it's really her and not someone who looks like her. How? Arthur Vane is going to check the school's security cameras. If it's Vanessa, he'll be able to identify her. And then what? Then we decide how to handle this, because clearly the threats weren't enough to keep her away. Dean had been unusually quiet throughout the conversation. What if she's just trying to see Miles, he finally asked. What if she really misses him and isn't planning anything malicious? Robert and I looked at him as if he had lost his mind. Dean, I said gently, this is the woman who was present when her family tried to drown your son, who killed her own brother to keep him from confessing, who blackmailed our family. She's not here out of maternal feelings. But maybe. No, Robert interrupted firmly. There are no maybes with people like Vanessa. Her return means she's planning something, and our priority is protecting Miles. Robert's phone rang. It was Arthur. What did you find? Robert asked, putting the phone on speaker. It's definitely Vanessa Vance. The cameras clearly captured her, but there's something else you need to know. What? She didn't come alone. There's a man with her, someone I've seen before in my investigation into convenient marriages and insurance scams. Who is it? His name is Carlos Mendez. He's known for helping women like Vanessa solve complicated family problems. The air in the office thickened with tension. What kind of problems? Dean asked. The kind that usually result in convenient accidents for ex-husbands and people who stand in the way of inheritances. Are you saying they plan to kill Dean? My voice sounded strangled. I'm saying his presence here is no coincidence. Vanessa has clearly decided that getting Miles back is worth the risk of returning, and Carlos Mendez doesn't work for free. Where are they staying? Robert asked. That's what I'm trying to figure out. But Robert, there's something else. What? Carlos Mendez isn't just a common criminal. He has serious connections, people who could make your contacts look like Boy Scouts. I understood the implication immediately. Vanessa had returned with reinforcements that could neutralize the advantages Robert normally had in situations like this. What do you recommend? Robert asked. I recommend you consider leaving town. Tonight. Run away again? Run away and live or stay and risk Miles ending up an orphan? Dean turned pale. Do you really think they would kill all of us? I think Vanessa has spent 18 months planning this. I think she has learned from her previous mistakes, and I think this time she's not taking prisoners. After Arthur hung up, we sat in silence for several minutes. I'm not running away, I finally said. Not again, not from her. Grace. No, Robert, I've spent too many years of my life being a victim of that woman. I'm not going to spend my golden years running from city to city because she decided to come back. Then what do you suggest? I suggest we confront her directly, but this time on our terms. How? An idea had been forming in my mind while Arthur spoke. A dangerous, risky idea, but one that could end this once and for all. We give her what she wants, I said slowly. What? We give her access to Miles, but under our conditions, on our territory, with our rules. Dean stood up abruptly. Are you suggesting we use my son as bait? I'm suggesting we create a situation where Vanessa has to come to us, where we can control the environment and the outcome. It's too risky, Dean protested. Living in fear for the rest of our lives is riskier, I replied. Miles will grow up always looking over his shoulder, wondering when his mother will show up. We will grow old wondering when she will attack again. This needs to end. Now. Robert studied me carefully. What do you have in mind? I have in mind that tomorrow Vanessa is going to receive a very interesting message, a message she won't be able to ignore. What kind of message? I smiled and felt an echo of the woman who had saved her grandson from an icy lake 18 months earlier. The kind of message a desperate mother sends when her world is falling apart and she urgently needs help. The next morning, Arthur called with news that confirmed my worst fears and my best hopes. I found where they're staying. They have a room at the Crown Hotel under false names, but Grace, I also intercepted a conversation between Vanessa and Carlos Mendez. What did they say? They're planning to kidnap Miles tomorrow when he leaves school. The plan is to take him out of the country where custody laws are different and where Dean won't be able to touch him. I felt as if I had been hit with a hammer. Kidnap him? There's more. Once they have Miles safe, they plan to come back for Dean. Carlos specializes in making deaths look like accidents. And me. They see you as less important. They'd probably leave you alive, but without family, without purpose. It was diabolically cruel, even for Vanessa, to take my grandson and my son from me, leaving me alive to suffer the loss for the rest of my life. Arthur, I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to make sure Vanessa receives a very specific message this afternoon. I explained my plan. It was risky to the point of being suicidal, but it was the only way to end this once and for all. 2 hours later, Vanessa received a text message from a number she couldn't trace. Dean had an accident. He's in the hospital. Miles is with me and is hysterical. He needs his mother. Come alone to Central Park at 8 p.m. Bench by the lake. Grace. It was exactly the kind of message a desperate grandmother would send if she truly needed help. And knowing Vanessa's arrogance, I knew she couldn't resist the opportunity to show up as the mother rescuing her child in crisis. Of course, she wouldn't come alone. She would bring Carlos Mendez. But that was fine. It was exactly what I needed to happen. Central Park was perfect for what I had planned. Large, with many paths and hiding places, but also with enough open space for what I needed to do. And the bench by the lake, the same lake where Vanessa had been present when her family tried to drown Miles, had a symbolism I appreciated. At 7:30 p.m., I was sitting on the bench, seemingly alone. Miles was safe at Robert's house with 3 bodyguards my brother had hired. Dean was perfectly fine, hidden with Robert in a position where they could see the entire park but not be seen. Arthur and his contacts were strategically positioned around the park. It wasn't legal, but after everything that had happened, legality had ceased to be my main concern. At 8:05, Vanessa appeared. She came alone, at least seemingly, walking quickly toward the bench with a convincing expression of maternal concern. Grace, where is Miles? How is Dean? Sit down, Vanessa. She sat down cautiously at the other end of the bench. Where is my son? Safe, away from you. The mask of concern immediately slipped from her face. What is this? This is the end of the game, Vanessa. We know you plan to kidnap Miles tomorrow. We know about Carlos Mendez. We know everything. Vanessa laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. If you know all that, why are you here alone? Who says I'm alone? As if in response to my words, Carlos Mendez stepped out from behind a nearby tree. He was exactly as I had imagined him. Large, intimidating, with the kind of face that had seen too much violence. Mrs. Morales, he said in a rough voice, I think you and I need to have a conversation. I'm sure we do. Carlos approached until he was a few feet from the bench. Vanessa has told me all about you, about your family, about the trouble you've caused. Trouble? Is that what you call protecting a child from murderers? Is that what I call interfering in family matters that don't concern you? Vanessa got up from the bench. Carlos, just grab her. We can find Miles later. But Carlos didn't move. He was studying me with a strange expression. Mrs. Morales, may I ask you something? Of course. Is your brother Robert Morales? Yes. Carlos nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something he had been suspecting. And do you know who I am? I know you're a criminal who helps women like Vanessa get rid of inconvenient families. Yes, that's true. But I'm also a man who knows the rules of the game, and there are certain lines you don't cross. Vanessa looked at him with growing alarm. Carlos, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that your mother-in-law is Robert Morales' sister, and I don't mess with Robert Morales' family. But we have an agreement. We had an agreement before I knew who she really was. Carlos turned to me. Mrs. Morales, with the greatest respect, I think there's a misunderstanding here. What kind of misunderstanding? Vanessa told me that you and your family had been blackmailing her, threatening her, that you had illegally separated her from her son. And now I think maybe I didn't hear the whole story. Vanessa looked increasingly desperate. Carlos, we have a deal. You promised me you would help me. I promised to help you with a family problem. I didn't promise to commit professional suicide. Just then, Robert emerged from his hiding place, followed by Dean and 3 men I didn't recognize, but who obviously worked for my brother. Carlos, Robert greeted him cordially. How have you been? Robert, I should have known you were involved in this. I apologize for the misunderstanding. If I had known Vanessa had hired you, I would have cleared up the situation sooner. Carlos nodded. No problem. Business is business. But now that I understand the real situation, he turned to Vanessa, our agreement is canceled. You can't do that. Of course I can, especially when I discover that you lied to me about the basic facts. I didn't lie to you. No. Carlos pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. Immediately, Vanessa's voice filled the air of the park. The plan was perfect until that witch interfered. The boy drowns. Dean goes crazy with grief. Do you want to explain to me how planning the murder of a 5-year-old child counts as being a victim of blackmail? Carlos asked. Vanessa was speechless for the first time since I had known her. Carlos, Robert said, how about you and Vanessa leave here right now and we forget this conversation ever happened? And her? She's going to disappear. Permanently, and this time, she's going to stay disappeared. Carlos looked at Vanessa with disgust. Ma'am, you have 5 minutes to get out of this park. After that, I can't guarantee your safety. But my son, your son is better off without you, I said, rising from the bench. And if you ever try to contact him again, it won't be Carlos Mendez you have to fear. Vanessa looked at me with pure hatred. This doesn't end here. Yes, it ends here, Robert replied with a final voice, because the next time you show up, there will be no conversations, no second chances. Understood? Vanessa looked around the group of men surrounding her, finally realizing she had no power in this situation. Without Carlos Mendez, she was just a lone woman against a family that had repeatedly shown they would do anything to protect themselves. Understood, she finally mumbled. Pardon me, I didn't hear you. Understood, she yelled and left. For the second time, but this time I knew it would be definitive. 3 months later, Arthur confirmed that Vanessa had left the country. She had sold everything she owned and bought a plane ticket to Eastern Europe, where extradition laws were complicated and where she could start a new life away from us. Dean finalized the divorce and obtained permanent custody of Miles without opposition. A year later, Dean married Sarah in a small ceremony in my backyard. Miles was the ring bearer, radiant with the happiness to finally have a stable and loving family. Robert never faced charges for his methods. Apparently, when you have the kind of information he had on other people, those people prefer not to ask uncomfortable questions. I continued taking my dance classes and added international cooking classes. At 56, I was finally living the life I wanted, surrounded by the family I deserved. Sometimes, when Miles is playing in my backyard and Dean and Sarah are cooking dinner in my kitchen, I think about that terrible afternoon on the frozen lake that started it all. I think about this scared, submissive woman I was then, always trying to keep the peace, always accepting crumbs of love from her own family. That woman died in the icy water when she saved her grandson. The woman who emerged from that lake was someone completely different, someone who knew her own worth, someone who would not accept less than she deserved, someone who would protect her family no matter the cost. Vanessa thought she could destroy the Moraleses. Instead, she taught us exactly what we were made of. And now, every Sunday, when my family gathers around my table for dinner, I raise my glass and make the same toast. To the family we choose, to the love we protect, and to the strength we find when we need it most. Miles always asks what that means. Someday, when he's older, I'll tell him the whole story. I'll tell him about his real mother, about the day on the lake, about everything we did to keep him safe. But for now, I simply tell him, it means you are loved, my grandson, more than you could ever imagine, and that in the end is the only truth that matters.